Welcome to the Total Health Podcast, brought to you by Total Health Nutrition Center of Menominee Falls and New Berlin, Wisconsin. Join Total Health founder Marty Johnson and his guests as they discuss some of the most prolific topics in natural health. Listen now as him and his guests talk about how to take back your health naturally.
Hello, I'd like to welcome you to another podcast. This particular podcast is going to be on allergies, and just like to talk a bit about that. Right now, allergy, as far as pollens go, is quite high, as far as we're seeing a lot of cases of allergies right now. But of course, there's a lot of different types of allergies that people suffer with. Allergies to mold, of course, pollen, like we mentioned, chemicals, and foods. Those are some of the main categories. But before we get into different products and things that we like to use and have discovered that can be helpful with allergies, I'd like to just talk a little bit about an allergy response and what it really is. A lot of times you might have heard of histamines and what is allergies and what is histamines. I guess we can kind of talk a little bit about that. But as part of an immune response to a foreign pathogen, meaning that if something gets into your body that your immune system looks at as a foreign substance that's in the bloodstream, there's specific cells that will produce or leak histamines as a response to these substances. And those cells are called basophils and mast cells. And they're really found in nearby connective tissues. So if these cells can be in the sinus cavities, so when they're exposed to a particular type of pollen, like ragweed, for instance, for some people more than others, depending on how sensitive they are, these cells will start to leak these histamines, which cause many different symptoms, as you probably know. They're sneezing, watering eyes, irritation, inflammation in the tissues, things like that. So primarily, when it comes to allergic reactions, these mast cells are really, a big part of the whole aspect of it. So things that we have found to be very helpful when it comes to dealing with the response of these basophils and mast cells are products such as quercetin, and that's an actual antioxidant that can be found in different foods, but in higher concentrations in a supplemental form, it can really help with strengthening the immune system. And it really helps to block the release of histamines from these mast cells and basophils. So quercetin can be a really good antihistamine, if you will, from a natural standpoint. There's other factors that can cause allergies, which we'll talk about in a little bit, that maybe are more related to food allergies and so forth. But for now, I want to just go through some of these supplements. Quercetin actually is one of the better ones that I've come across for helping to work as a natural antihistamine. However, it tends to be more effective when it's combined with bromelain, which is a pineapple enzyme, and vitamin C. So oftentimes you'll find combinations of quercetin, bromelain, and vitamin C as a product, a combination in one that will be used for antihistamines. The other product that I like to use or suggest along with quercetin oftentimes is turmeric. And of course it depends on the severity of the allergy response and so forth, but turmeric in its own right isn't a real powerful antihistamine type natural product, but it definitely is a powerhouse in the area of anti-inflammatory properties. And when these histamines are being released in nearby connective tissues and so forth, they cause inflammation, which is basically a normal immune response. So if we can control inflammation, it can definitely help to control some of the aspects of allergies that are discomforting, such as, sinus inflammation, sometimes inflammation in the tissues around the eyes and things like that. So turmeric is a good consideration depending on the severity of the allergies and so forth. One of my favorites in the area of overall all-time favorites, a product that I use a lot in the clinic and personally, is a product called Anternex. And this is one of our clinical products that we use that is really it stems from Japanese researchers in the 1920s discovered the histamine effect of a specific type of liver extract, and usually from a bovine liver extract. And when taken internally, it actually acts as a decongestant for the liver. And this product actually is called, or the substance is called Yakriton, and Yakriton. And that's where they derive the name Anternex from, is from the Yakriton, which is in it. And Anternex is actually rated according to the amount of Yakriton that it contains. And it really is a specific type of liver extract that helps in the blood filtering aspect of the liver. So how the blood filters through the liver, this Yakriton is actually affects that, and it allows the liver to clear out much more effectively. So it really quickens the detoxification process of blood flow through the liver, and therefore helps with clearing out histamines from the body. And when we do this, when you actually clear the liver in this way, the way this product works, it works great for helping the head to drain better. So like your sinuses to drain when you have sinus pressure. Many times chronic infections are a result of just poor drainage from the sinuses. So if the sinuses can't drain properly, then you have stagnant fluids in the sinus cavities, and that's basically just a recipe for bacteria to brew. But if you can get things to drain properly, then you can reduce that. Got a little testimony actually on Anternex. For years and years, I would get at least one, but more often than not, 2 sinus infections a year. So if I would get maybe a mild cold, or maybe around allergy season when ragweed was high, I'd start to get more inflammation in the sinuses and histamine release and more fluids in the sinuses. But my sinuses wouldn't drain as well, so I'd get a lot of sinus headaches, and then end up eventually getting a sinus infection a couple of times a year, maybe if I was lucky, maybe once a year. And of course, even being in a naturopathic environment, once in a while, the infection would get out of control where I just could not get it under control with natural things and would have to do a mild antibiotic, which I really hated. And so I would go maybe to a nurse practitioner, have them take a look at things, get the prescription, and run it. But one particular nurse practitioner had told me that, yeah, you got a weird angle to your sinuses and they're just not draining as well as what they should. So that's probably why I'm prone to this. So that's when I did some research and I came across this Anternex, and I started taking it every day just on a regular basis, because going off of the fact that my sinuses didn't drain as well. Well, by my surprise, basically I rarely get sinus headaches anymore. And I've done this for years where I've taken Anternex, and I have not gotten an infection in probably about 8 years now. So great blessing, and great product, and we use it a lot. It can even be used for a histamine reaction from, a food that was eaten, or if someone was stung by a bee and they have a mild, kind of a hive reaction, you can take larger amounts of this Anternex to clear this histamine out and really get that reaction under control quite quickly. And it's safe even for young, small kids or babies, things like that. Of course, with babies, we have to crush the tablets and have them take it in a powder form or something like that. The other areas that I want to mention real quick that are important consideration, actually this one is kind of a good one to talk about right now, is actually low stomach acid. So a lot of Americans have heartburn, and you might think that more people have high stomach acid or too much stomach acid rather than low stomach acid, but actually low stomach acid production is quite common. About 22% of U.S. population have low stomach acid production. They call it hypochlorhydria, and that a lot of time, what we find is that number is probably that high because of the various toxins that might be on the foods that people are eating, from processed meats to, various packaged foods, preservatives, non-organic foods. And after a while, these toxins get into the stomach and they affect the cells that produce hydrochloric acid. So that's not terribly surprising that this could happen. But research does show, they don't know all the reasons, but research does show that low stomach acid can lead to more allergy, more of a tendency towards allergies, and of course other things like bloating, because a person's not digesting their proteins as well. And if they're not digesting their proteins as well, it means that they're probably rancifying in the stomach, causing heartburn. So a lot of people think heartburn is from an over-acid stomach, but it can also be from a low-acid stomach because the food's not digesting properly. So therefore, it'll rancify and then come up as heartburn. The other factor that is interesting is the research on Anternex shows that the Anternex doesn't... it's not as effective with a low hydrochloric acid stomach. So when you're taking this orally, it's really activated and broken down properly by the stomach acid and will work much better. So we try to keep an eye on that when working with people in that arena. The last aspect, or actually not the last aspect, but pretty close to it, is the environment of the gut, the intestinal tract, is also very important. So part of having less allergy responses is having a strong immune system. And part of having a strong immune system is having a healthy, what we call microbiome in the intestinal environment, which means that there's healthy bacteria or probiotics that are definitely overpopulating the bad bacteria. So sometimes with excessive antibiotic use or over the years antibiotic use, it can throw off the gut microbiome and kill off the good bacteria, and then the bad bacteria can flourish. And sometimes people's intestinal environment will never get in balance, just on its own. So we have to look at the right type of probiotics to use to try to get that healthy bacteria in there and get that right, proper acidic balance back into the intestinal tract. And when people have these gut imbalances, it can start to lead to what we call leaky gut syndrome. And that's where the wall of the intestine becomes more permeable and allows molecules of food or toxins into the bloodstream that were not supposed to be there, that were never meant to get into the bloodstream. And consequently, the immune system will go after that like it's an invader and cause sometimes a histamine response as well. So you can have all of these things going on, and we have to look at the body as a whole to make sure that we're handling, all the aspects of health so that we can maximize what we want to maximize health, so we can minimize, allergy responses or other health issues going on. The food allergies, that I wanted to mention that leaky gut strictly because a lot of people wonder about food allergies, and you hear a lot about it now where people are sensitive to wheat or gluten or corn, and they never used to be when they were younger. And I've had some people say that, well, yeah, this is just a fad where, doctors, holistic doctors are saying that everyone's just sensitive to gluten as a blanket statement. But that's not true. The fact of the matter is that our environment is getting to a point where there's more and more toxins in the environment, and more people are actually dealing with leaky gut issues, and therefore foods that they used to be able to handle without an allergy response, now they're getting more symptomatic because the intestinal wall is allowing molecules through that should not be, entering into the bloodstream. There also are foods that are higher in histamines themselves. In other words, some different foods have these histamine-like substances that are already in the food, and some foods are higher than others. So if a person's already got allergy sensitivities to certain foods, then they might want to research and try to minimize high histamine foods until they can kind of get a handle on some of the other aspects of their health, like the leaky gut and the microbiome and the hydrochloric acid balance and all that kind of stuff. Foods that are higher in histamines would be alcohols or fermented beverages. Fermented foods like sauerkraut, yogurt, certain cheeses, dried fruits, processed or smoked meats, shellfish, tomatoes, bananas, certain nuts. Some of the higher ones are peanuts, cashews, and walnuts, and food dyes that can be in foods. Processed foods can also be higher in histamines. That's just an example. You can certainly do some research and find other foods, but I figured for the purpose of this podcast, I'd mention a few of them. So I hope this is helpful. Typically, some of the things I mentioned really should be used in combination. You can use any one of them effectively, especially like the Anternex or Quercetin, but for sure, using a combination of products and actually maybe even working with a practitioner to determine, okay, is your hydrochloric acid levels good? How is your gut health? What product combination is right for you? And also, how are your organs functioning? Is your liver, filtering toxins out efficiently? And is your kidneys filtering toxins out efficiently? If these drainage organs, which I call them, they're the main filters in the body, if they're not filtering toxins out properly, the whole system kind of backs up, and you can have various symptoms going on just because of that. So many times it is a huge value to kind of work with someone on your overall health and kind of get a good handle on it so that you can kind of move forward with your life and maybe be less symptomatic to different things, have less body pain, less aches, have your metabolism work better, or what have you. So if that's of interest to you, by all means, call our office. 262-251-2929 is our clinic office number. You can also go onto our website and check that out. It's totalhealthinc.com. And there's a lot on our website to take a look at, including some of the products we talked about we have available on our website, or we can also help people by phone with that. But anyway, that's a little bit of information on allergies. Hopefully this was helpful. You have a great day, and we'll be talking to you next time on the next podcast.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Total Health Podcast. If you're ready to take the next steps in taking back your health, please give our office a call at 262-251-2929 to claim your no-charge 15-minute phone consult to see what next steps could be. Also, if you'd like further information, please see us online at www.totalhealthinc.com. Thanks for listening.